What's up, you guys? Chet Guthrie, the Dream Poet here, coming to you all on a very, very cold October night. Yes, the season is upon us, you guys. But this is episode 4 of Haunt Season. Now, you guys, throughout this entire series so far, I have covered a lot of Cleveland, Tennessee and Charleston, Tennessee's ghost stories, or at least their local ghost stories, their folklore. Well, tonight, you guys, as we are here on this walk, I want to tell you all about a personal ghost story of mine. This is something that happened back in 2017 to 2018. So you guys, let's go for a walk. Remember, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. It always means a lot. It goes to show that y'all care, especially in the growing of this channel. So, come take a seat and listen to my tale. Anchor down. Now, this story begins in January of 2017, when my best friend makes a purchase. He finds himself a rental. Now, this home in question, it is an older home built in 1963, very large. Current owner at the time, still present owner, he took this very large home and he turned it into a quadplex. Now, what a quadplex is essentially it is 4 one-room apartments with bathrooms, of course. Now, initially, my best friend loved this apartment. Found it on a Craigslist ad, moved everything in. He was happy. You see, he had dealt with some personal trouble a few years back that sent him living with his family for a little while. So he was happy to be back on his feet again. But about 3 months in him living at this apartment, we're walking along the Greenway in March, right beside Cleveland High School. As y'all can see, we are on the north end. Well, no, I guess it'd be the south end of the Greenway. But he turns to me and he says, "Chet, I think there is a spook in my house." Well, I'm curious. I ask him, "What do you mean? What do you mean there's a ghost in your house, or a spook, or what have you?" Well, he turns to me and he says, "Chet, I'd gotten off late from work one morning. I had turned on my coffee pot, was making some coffee, and I fell asleep on the futon." I'm like, "And?" He says, "When I woke up, the coffee machine had been turned off. It wasn't some kind of electrical malfunction, some kind of mechanical failure. No, it had physically turned itself off." Well, this leaves me in a predicament. 'Cause me knowing my best friend, he has dealt with similar issues before. And, well, it leaves me worried. So I brush it off and I tell him, "Well, you know, it's probably nothing." He's like, "Well, we'll see. This is usually how it starts." Or, pardon me, "This is usually how it starts," as he quoted. And, well, he couldn't have been further from the truth in saying that. because for the next, well, 9 months, total hell would be unleashed in this apartment. It all started when my best friend could not find his cooking knives. You see, his cooking knives he used for various cooking methods, of course. You see, my best friend was a good cook and still is a good cook. And sorry, I just caught this. I feel this is kind of weird because I really don't know what it is, but it kind of looks like a runner's turnaround. That's kind of weird that that's out here. Maybe they had some kind of walk. You see, my best friend would begin to find his cooking knives in totally different parts of the house. From the cooking drawer that he would keep all these top-notch cooking knives, they would appear in, well, they would appear in his dresser drawer. They would appear on his coffee table without warning. They would appear in totally different parts of the house, like the bathroom. Now, this began to include other items. For example, my best friend, his glasses would go missing. His car keys would go missing. All these little nooks or knickknacks, all these important pieces of, well, materials, these tools would just go missing, and then they would reappear. And this is when the story begins to get weird. You see, my best friend had a cat. Now, this cat was about 13 years old. He was a friendly cat, been raised inside his entire life. Well, the moment that Scrappy came into this home, he began to act weird. And when I say weird, he would stare into blank space and he would hiss. He would hiss loudly as if some violator or some burglar had broken into my best friend's house. It was almost as if it was some kind of invisible stranger. And this would only continue for the next 9 months. It actually came to a point where Scrappy would stay in the bathroom and he would never come out. This cat was frightened at whatever was in this building. Now, you see, now Scrappy, often he would sit at the foot of my best friend's bedroom. Now, he would never go inside, which is a strange thing. He would just stare blankly with some kind of angry look. And now these drawings that I have been putting up, these are recreations of what happened. Some of them are actually some things that I have seen, which leads me into how this situation got much worse. You see, whatever this thing was, this entity, it began to wake my best friend up in the middle of the night. It would growl at him. It would whisper in his ear. Now, my best friend could not make out whatever this thing was saying, other than it had some kind of evil intent. And this comes into what I experienced. The first experience that I had in this apartment firsthand was that it was one night. It was a cold day, or night, I should say, in February. My best friend and I, we are sitting there on the couch. We are watching a movie. And that is when we begin to feel a cold spot. Now, this cold spot was right between my legs and his legs. And that is when Scrappy, who was sitting in my lap, began to hiss. He began to hiss at this empty corner between my best friend and I. I began to freak out, which that night only began to get stranger. You see, outside at 2 a.m., here's a knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Now, me being there as well, I thought that was strange. Me and him get up and we go to the front door. And when we get there, no one is there. So, my best friend and I, we sit back down. We're watching television, a movie. And that is when we get a second knock. Once again, we get up, we walk to the door, and nothing is there. And that was at that point that my best friend told me, "Oh yes, it's been messing with me like this." Honestly, it freaked me out because for what would happen next. You see, the third time that it would happen, we would open the door. And there, between the glass and the front door, a giant hand appeared in that cold glass. Now, this hand was probably about twice the size of mine. It did not look human. It looked otherworldly. It did not look like something that was benevolent. It looked like something evil. After that, I began to feel that my best friend was unsafe in this apartment. Now, as well, you see, the landlord was Catholic. And he, one night, while he was having a drink with us, he was telling us about the knocking of the threes. Now, within the Catholic beliefs, the knocking of the threes is the sign of an evil entity. The presence of something that is mocking the Holy Trinity, or, for lack of a better terms, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. This is very disturbing for what I'm about to tell you all. You see, that final night, the final night that he decided not to renew the lease, we had a pretty good sized New Year's Eve party. It was with a few friends. We were having fun. It was a good night. Well, all of us crash around 2 a.m. Now, two of our friends, they fall asleep on the futon. My best friend, he goes and falls asleep on his bed. I fall asleep on the couch. Now, 2 hours later, I wake up and I hear heavy breathing. Heavy breathing that honestly sounded horrifying. And quite honestly, if it makes any sense, I felt like this thing stood about at least 7 feet tall. It was very creepy. I was afraid to look up. I did not, for what I was afraid that I would see. And really, that has stayed with me for about 5 years now. Well, the day came. My best friend, he moved out of this apartment. And he moved into another, which was safe to say, he made the right decision. But this is not where the story ends. You see, the next apartment that he would own, a completely new apartment, well, strange things would begin to occur in this apartment. Things would go missing, like before. Strange whispers would appear and be heard. And at one point, my best friend would see a full body apparition. And this is when we would find what happened in the previous apartment. You see, the landlord was talking to one of the neighbors who had been living on that street for many, many years. And in the 1980s, the couple who owned that house, the man and the wife, they died in that house. Now, we do not know what they died of, which is the strange thing, but from what we were told by the neighbor, from the landlord, was that this man was not a kind man whatsoever. He was a very, very, very mean individual. And the wife, well, that's where we don't really know. You see, where they died was in the apartment just above my best friend's. So, this could probably explain what he was feeling, because his apartment was right beneath theirs. However, this is where it gets interesting. You see, my best friend and a former friend of mine, back in 2012, they decided to use a Ouija board. And when they used this Ouija board, they botched the process. They did some things that they shouldn't have done. And in doing so, this is where I believe these entities had gone through the doorway that they had opened. And, well, you see, there was even one night that my best friend woke up with a giant knife laying at the foot of his bed at this new apartment. He would often see shadow figures in this apartment. Strange acts of force would happen in this new apartment. Like, for example, somehow, in some way, a door had managed to slam itself shut hard enough to knock a hole in the wall. That takes a lot of force. And again, an example of this is one night he was sitting watching TV and a Cheez-Its box began to move on its own. It began to sway back and forth as if somebody was pushing it. This is probably the darkest ghost story that I know of, and it happened here in Cleveland. Now, I cannot give the proper address to this place other than it is not that far from M&M Mars. But you guys, there is a good ending to the story. You see, my best friend, these entities have not followed him since last year, which is very fortunate. It is an end to a very dark season in his life. But anyway, guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. It always means a lot, and it goes to show that you all care. I hope you all like this video because it was definitely different from the local ghost stories and lore that I had been telling here around Cleveland. This was my personal ghost story, and I thought I'd save it for the end. So you guys, I love you all very much. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Vlog over.